This is Talking Devils, your favourite Manchester United podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Barton, joined as always by Manchester United legend Paul Parker to talk over another rollercoaster fortnight of Manchester United. Morning, Paul. How are you doing? Paul, you got the sound there?
Yeah, I've got sound now. Sorry, Wayne. Sorry.
That's all right. How are you doing? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you very much. I just can't wait until this week's gone and then we're away from international football.
Yeah, it's been a long one, especially considering we had that dodgy result to kick off international week. If you're watching live on YouTube or Facebook, please subscribe to the channel. Feel free to get your questions in if you're watching live as well. And if you're watching on Twitter, I don't know if they can accommodate the questions just yet, but give it a like, thumbs up, or whatever you can do on there. Really appreciate that. Feel free to join in the conversation. Paul, it's been a couple of weeks, like we said before. We've been able to reconvene after that game against Everton. I think it's fair to say that only United can a draw be met with the intense scrutiny that basically says that the manager's position comes under threat. I don't know how seriously it is under threat, considering that the new contract was given to McPherson and everything like that. It seems to be a public message of support for the manager. But it is another big topic, as it tends to be every few weeks with this manager, and we will be getting to that. But Paul, before we do, let's get into the Everton game because it's one that we missed before international break. We do have to have a recap of it. 1-1 final score. Ole made a few changes, notably to the front line. Cavani and Martial came in. Martial scored in the first half, but otherwise looked quite lethargic. You thought maybe it's a shop window performance for him, and he was much the same as he's ever been. United with a midfield of McTominay and Fred, once again worryingly non-existent. They're there to be pragmatic in the middle of the park, protect the defence, but they're not even doing that at the moment. There's a deep concern. Everton were exploiting a lot of space on the counter-attack. They did that with the equaliser in the second half, and then from then on probably looked likelier to win the game. They had that late effort disallowed as well. Ole brought on Sancho and Ronaldo, who were on the bench. Didn't work out. We drew 1-1. We never even looked like winning the game, to be fair. Paul, we'll break down the tactics in a minute. We'll come to the sort of shape of the team and everything. But on the game itself, Everton we've got to say they were good value for the draw, really.
They were really, really good value, Everton, and I'd seen them a few weeks prior to that in the EFL Cup, Queen's Park Rangers, and Queen's Park Rangers totally outplayed them. They outplayed them, a team not too dissimilar to the one that started at Old Trafford, to be honest, really. It was just more of a change in the back line that the difference was, but Everton were far superior in every area than Manchester United. United started the first half and the second half better than Everton. And even I was sitting doing the game, and even I said, second half, I said, yes, United have started quite lethargic, but they're still keeping the ball. Everton are on the back foot without United even trying to really break them down, and just content to keep the ball for the sake of keeping the ball and not trying to keep the ball in pressure areas where they're going to kind of threaten Everton. And, and it's easy people want to count passes and how many passes you made and pass percentage. But unless you're actually hurting people, it's a waste of time because it means nothing. And that's what it is, really. Nothing direct, nothing progressive. And Everton just took that. I mean, we have to say Gray has never had a better game at Old Trafford than what he did on that day. He was incredible.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's his best performance ever at Old Trafford. Maybe one of his best 90 minutes.
Yeah.
He's played. It was a really good performance, and they took him off in the end. And I'm saying to myself, you wouldn't take him off at the moment because he was putting United on the back foot so often. You think to yourself, you're going to release the pressure. It didn't, but I think they took him off so he could get what he deserved, was applause from the away fans, because he was incredible for them. But I look at United, and dare I say it, which it was said after, but I said it. As soon as I saw what the team was, I went, that's a bad mistake. Because straight away, if you're Everton, you're thinking to yourself, Ronaldo's not playing. Straight away, that releases a bit of pressure on those two centre-halves. They think, well, we ain't got to worry about him too much for his movement. Not that he's going to run away from you. It's about his movement. We ain't got to worry about it. Everton two centre-halves are not, I think it was Keane and it was Mina, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the two centre-halves, and they're not the sharpest and movement. You can move them around all over the place. And Ronaldo would have done that, but no, they left him on the bench. And then he brings in two players who haven't had a lot of football between them, ring rusty, into a game. And the whole thing was around that Ronaldo can't play every game. Well, I'm sorry, my idea of someone like Ronaldo and what he wants goals. If he's going to score goals, he needs games. There's no League Cup to play anymore because he decided about how, the way he wanted to be about that. So there's Premier League and in theory Champions League. And so what you've got to do with someone like Ronaldo, you play him until such time he tells you when he thinks he might need a rest. It sounds maybe a little bit pompous or whatever, he might be that way, but no one knows body better than the person inside, and you're looking for honesty from him. And I think Ronaldo just wants to play every game to keep his engine ticking over. To stop-start, I don't think he can do that. He came on as a sub against Everton, and he ended up playing midfield. Sancho had one little spurt. You think to yourself, there's something there. I mean, the jury are still out there regarding the fee that was paid for him, regarding the fact that no one else seemed to be bidding for him, and yet we pay over £70 million. And I haven't seen anything yet. I never saw anything prior to him coming United to warrant that fee, and I still haven't seen it. People will say to me it's a bit early. People will say, oh, it takes time to settle in the Premier League. I say, that's rubbish. When you pay £70 million for somebody, you expect them to hit the ground running. That means they've got qualities which kind of says that they can just get themselves, kind of get themselves and soak into everything that's going around them and build their way in very quickly. He's nowhere near that at this moment in time. Maybe he needs belief.
Yeah, but on that point, I would say that probably in the Villarreal game, which we'll talk about later on, but also when he came on against Everton, there were a couple of flashes there. And the point is, really, to return to the original statement that you made, is that it was the change in the team, really. With the loss of these competitions, Ole took a gamble, which I think... the one thing that concerns... Well, there are a couple of things that concern me about it, but the first one in the changes that he made, where, like Sancho and Ronaldo were on the bench rather than starting the game. What's that effectively telling us? It's saying that Ole's seen this as a progressive season in a way that he can afford to take that change. And I don't think he could afford it. He's inviting pressure because he knows that the likelihood is that makes things difficult for him. I think maybe he does trust those players to get the result, don't get me wrong, but I think it's an unnecessary gamble. Like you said, there was the international break in front of us. And you can't use a Premier League game as a shop window. And I know Martial scored, but anyone who watched that game could see that he was the same old Martial. And I don't mean that getting really on the back of him, because it's like we've said a few times on this podcast. I think it's past the point of criticising the player because you know what you're going to get from him. So when he puts in the performance that he does, which is infuriating, and then he pops up with a goal, but offers little to the game, then you know what you're going to get from him anyway. But it adds nothing to the team, really. I mean, I guess in a sense, stupid as it sounds, goals do influence games. So we got that, and we got a point thanks to that. But you don't learn anything new. It adds nothing. What I still maintain that I would have preferred to have seen Sancho start the game. And that's the concern, isn't it? Is that a concern for you, Paul? The fact that Ole is looking at a game like that and thinking, well, I can continue to ease in Sancho gently and I don't have to play Ronaldo. He can't afford. He doesn't have the time to do that.
He doesn't. He's in the moment. He's on the clock at the moment in time with a lot of people now. More so, people who are even backing him and wanting him still there were having fierce, vocal battles with people. over the fact that he was still in the job and they didn't believe he should be in that job. I think one of the saving graces is that there's nobody really out there at the moment that anyone can throw in the face to say for Manchester United to get. But when you've got someone like, he's got to play him and he's got to get him out and let the young lad feel confident that he's wanted by the manager, that the manager's going to play him. He wants to keep playing games. He's playing consistently from where he's come from, playing for a second, third best team, whatever you want to call it, in the Bundesliga. And all of a sudden, he comes to Manchester United. He knows the history of Manchester United, but he still mostly believes that he warrants a spot. He was playing regular Champions League football for Dortmund, but now he's not starting Premier League games, and he mostly can't fathom it. He's looking who's in front of him, and he's kind of thinking, well, what's going on? He's not even starting maybe where he wants to be on the right-hand side, where he's got a lot of belief to go round the outside, a little bit different to on his left side. So I just wonder, was he a signing that necessarily wasn't that important to be making, given the players already in the squad?
Yeah,
and then you look at how he's got.
To be fair, you were saying that before we signed him, so it's not like.
Yeah, but I mean, then all of a sudden he's still got Rashford to come back, and we know that he's going to feel obliged to play Rashford in certain ways. I mean, because it becomes a little bit political on that side of things, and I've said it, and that's how it is to me. When Rashford is fit, he will feel obliged to play him, and so that puts the manager under more pressure as well in selection. So, and then he's got someone like Mason Greenwood, who is still, in theory, United's most consistent front player at this moment in time. Ronaldo scored goals, but when you're looking at what he does in games and the effect he has on defenders he's playing against, he's been the most impressive player with the football at his feet. His movement, his passing, he's been the most effective. Take away goals. I know goals are the most important thing in games, but you've got to look at the football sometimes that people play rather than sometimes looking at stats. It's about how they play, and he's been impressive. So he can't leave him out. He's a local boy as well, but he deserves to start every game. Now, he's the one, maybe, if you want to talk about resting people, whatever, you might think about someone like him. If you wanted to go in that line, and the Sancho comes in, you think, okay, a little bit of a battle there for that position, but that might then overflow, and then you get one who might be happy to go and play on the other side. But I've said it before, I used the word sentiment. He needs to put that to bed and start saying to himself, I need to win every single game as manager of this football club. And I need to get my best players involved in every single game, or my key players involved in every single game. So I want to go out strong. Can Ronaldo start? If he can start, yes. If he scores and things are comfortable, then maybe you can take him off. But don't keep having him sitting on the bench and then bringing him on when it's going a little bit wrong, because you're putting more pressure on an aging player by saying to him, go out there and win me the game. That means he's going to feel, and the way Ronaldo is, he's going to want to go and prove a point. He's going to want the adulation with going out there and scoring the most important goal, as he did in Europe. But he's putting more strain on his body by pushing him out there every time things ain't going right. And the thing as well, as you see with TV, every time something went wrong, the camera panned to the manager, then panned to Ronaldo on the bench, looking to see what he's saying. Is he nudging people and looking for those little bits that they can use to put more pressure on Ole? So you don't put yourself in that position. If you're not going to use Ronaldo, you say you want to rest him, then turn around and be in his face and be honest and say, I'm not going to play in this game. I'm not even going to have you in the squad. Then it takes that pressure off, rather than having him on the bench and feeding the director in the gallery, and allowing him to keep sending cameras to show Ronaldo on the bench. And United have to move on, and that means by the manager being stronger. And as much as I still want him to be Manchester United's manager, he's going to have to work very hard this season. That signing of Ronaldo has taken it now to the level of demanding even more from Manchester United because of one player.
Yeah.
Even though, as I said about Sancho signing, was it that important? The midfield for Manchester United is still battling to be one of the better one, be one of the top 10 in the Premier League.
Well, that's the point. Let's get on to that. McTominay and Fred is a conversation we've had many times on this podcast, and when we said it at the time of the Ronaldo signing, that the concern of the Ronaldo signing was that if they had the money to spend on a player like Ronaldo, why didn't they have the money to spend on a midfielder? When, don't get me wrong, you don't miss out on a player like Ronaldo. I can understand that, but the whole conversation we were having before Ronaldo even signed was there's no more money left. So if they didn't see the midfielder as a priority, then what are they playing at, basically? And we've got to the point now where we've talked about the merits of Ole playing these players, McTominay and Fred, and they obviously excel for their standards in the bigger games where they're expected to break up the play and not set the tone of it. But we've been saying, to be fair, you were saying it a lot earlier than what I was. I was going to give them a chance with this, but the big concern was that they couldn't set the tempo in the big games. No, not in the big games. Sorry, the smaller games. They definitely can't do it in the big games, but they can't do it in the smaller games as well. And especially when we're playing at home, it was becoming increasingly obvious that they couldn't dictate the tempo. And the knock-on argument to that is, well, you expect that from those players now. That's what you expect. So don't expect it from them that they're going to do something that they don't do, but at least they're there to be pragmatic. The issue is, in the last few games, when we've seen them, they're not doing the pragmatic side of it. They're not defending what they're supposed to be defending. I'm not criticising them as players. Maybe it's the system. Maybe it is them as players. But for whatever reason, the defence was still getting exposed. It's getting pulled all over the place. And part of the reason for that is the protective midfield wasn't being protective enough. You can't hide from the result. You can't hide from the way that the chances were created. Everton created a lot. Villa were creating a lot. That's because of the shape of the team and the qualities of the midfield that's there to protect the defence. And we've even upgraded the defence. Now, I mean, some people could point to the Varane switch, that he switched to the left to accommodate Lindelof. I think that's too simplistic because you can see that the concession of the chances is obviously due to the fact that they're not getting the sort of protection. And I'm not saying that they need the protection. I'm just saying it's obvious that they don't have it. And that's the point, Paul. That's the point with this now. If you don't have that midfield doing what, even with the limited qualities, doing what they're supposed to be doing within that limited quality, and knowing that they can't, they're not going to set the pace against a team like Everton, who were there. They had a lot of changes. We could have. That was a game like the Villa game we were comfortably expected to win at home. If you don't have a midfield that can control that game, and it's not even defending the defence the way that it's supposed to, Ollie has to make that change now. He has to look at that and say, look, I've trusted you guys. This is the point. This is the point, really, where he has to say, this is going to count against me. This is the swinging point, isn't it, really? This is where he looks at it and says, if I don't make this change, these results are going to determine my career at United.
Yeah, that's 100% right. But I think everyone knows, and I'm going with it at this weekend, he knows it's important to win. He believes he has to try his best to win. So is he going to change those two in the middle of midfield? No, he's not.
It's not going
He
to
will
happen.
go. That's his go-to. What he believes can give him the best chance of winning, and just go in there and try and destroy the best they can. The problem is this: it's not United's way. I played with some seriously good midfield players, but the one thing about them, of any midfield in that given time, doesn't matter what club it was, they could do both. They could destroy, and generally the top sides could create as well. And when you see some of the midfields back from that era, and you put them up against some of them now, you go, wow. But midfield players could go up and back. And the one thing generally what midfield players could do, they could keep the ball. Teams would keep the ball, and that's always been deemed, as the old-fashioned words are, the best form of defence is to attack. And United, ball retention wise, they're poor. They are poor compared to, you talk about the three teams everyone's talking about winning, the ones who could win the Premier League this season. United are not in that level. And then you look at everyone else in their midfield and you say, okay, that's where maybe they're competing at this moment in time, defensively and attacking wise as well. Crystal Palace midfield is mostly better defensively than Manchester United's, because you look at Crystal Palace's centre halves compared to the centre halves that Manchester United have got in comparison. You look at how much they cost in that bit, and they're still not better. Then the midfield at Palace definitely can attack better because they play a little bit deeper and they play on the counter. It's better. I really don't understand the way they're supposed to be playing. It's reliance on individuals to pull you out of trouble. Your reliance is on Mason Greenwood to nick a goal. How many times has that happened this season and last season? The reliance is now on Ronaldo to come from nowhere and score a goal. We saw that in Villarreal. And there's too much reliance on individuals to win. It's not about controlling games. United do not control games of football. And doesn't people, nothing wrong in playing smash and grab, but that's fine. It's only fine though if you're not Manchester United. If you're Manchester United, you have to have more because you're paying that little bit more. Being Manchester United, everyone wants to take more off you for anything you want from them because you're deemed them a big club. History, everything that goes with it, achievements, all there in black and white. And they're not playing in that way. They're nowhere near that. And yet they've got to make a big signing, but they've gone further away in people's mind of winning the Premier League. So how does that make any sense? So you have to look, and everyone keeps saying it. Everyone talks about Manchester United and midfield. I've been saying it for so long, and I don't know where it's going to go to. Does it actually need? The only way anyone seems to really take notice of it is for Gary Neville to come out and say it. What everyone's been saying for years. If he comes out and says it, also the media will grab hold of it and go, "Oh, Gary's right." Not only what everyone else is saying, the man in the street's saying it. No one listens to him, but he knows it. There is no cohesion. It's like putting oil and water together and expecting them to join together. And you'll sit there for ages watching it. It's never going to happen. Doesn't matter how often he keeps playing them and how many times he has. One or both of them, it doesn't work. They need more than that. And if you've got a little bit fluency in there, and that means putting in creative players who can do both. Because remember, there was a day or a time when midfield players had more than one bit in their game. They weren't just called defensive midfield players because they wouldn't abide by that. Could you imagine telling someone going up and saying to Roy Keane, "Oh, Roy, you're our defensive midfield player"? Can you imagine that? Just stand there, Roy, and pass the ball square and backwards. Same with Paul Ince.
The funny thing is with Roy is that he sort of did that himself, didn't he? After the hip injury, he just said, "No, I've realised my own limitations. I'll just sit here." And even then, when he did that, he was still the best player on the pitch most of the week.
Yeah, but he was still bursting forward. He made those bursts. He had to think about but then he had players around and he demanded more from them. He demanded more from those players around him to give him that bit that he used to do and now he couldn't do. But he'd done his bit and he didn't just stand there. He was still making those tackles. He was still organising. He was thrusting. He was demanding the ball to move the ball quicker from the back. There's no one who can do that. There's no one who goes and does that. Maybe that's an era thing. Maybe that's the way life has changed as individuals, the way that kids are being brought up now. But there isn't, people keep saying, "Oh, we need a leader." Well, sorry, this country hasn't got a leader, let alone them being born now into this world, because it's the way the world is. Those kind of people, those hungry people are not around in the game anymore because football's been taken away from the streets, from the working class. The footballer who is desperate to be a footballer because life hasn't made it easy for him. A lot of football now is middle class kids coming into football. It's a changing game.
Yeah. It's funny you say going back a little bit, and yeah, people might think listening to two old fuddy duddies talking about this, but I look at the thing that you just said brought to mind the famous incident when Cantona and Deschamps fell out, And basically that was because Cantona described Deschamps as a water carrier. And now we want 2 water carriers in our midfield. It's almost anathema to United. We're talking about the team and what needs to improve in the team, because we're talking about faith in the manager and still wanting him to not turn it around, because I don't think it's so bad to be turned around, just to improve and take us to the next part. But a lot of people aren't as patient as that, Paul. A lot of people do want him sacked. Some people, I mean, some of the stuff that I've been reading over the last few days is like, you sack him now and you'll win the Champions League, which I just think is complete nonsense. It's just based on what happened at Chelsea. But the problem that we've got is that every October, it seems that Ollie's under the. We were talking about this before the international break, weren't we, Paul? I don't know if it was on air or off air, but we were saying how every October seems to bring a lot of pressure for Ollie. Like last season, for example, we were fortunate in that we had a terrible summer where we weren't backed properly. Well, he wasn't backed. It was reminiscent, really, of Ollie's, of Jose Mourinho's last summer, where he got us to second and then wasn't backed for whatever reason. And I think we were kind of lucky that Liverpool had their injuries and Chelsea had the poor start, and Mourinho was wrecking Spurs. So we had not a free run at second. It was still their competitive sort of achievement to get there. I'm not disregarding that. I think it was a good achievement to get second, but I think it was a really good achievement to get second based on what we started on. But the fact is, like we said, every October he is under that kind of pressure. He does come under it where people are speculating about his future, and that tells you a thing. And you have to be blunt and say the situation is concerning enough that people think that's a serious conversation, right? It's not cut and dried for us to be saying, oh, Ollie's definitely been a success, because people are having the conversation in October that it's not going right. And we're here now, a few weeks into the season, and I think that without Ronaldo, we were all probably expecting top 4 and hoping that we'd challenge for the title, a step forward from last season. But I think we all sort of knew in our heart that the lack of centre midfield, if we didn't get one in before the deadline, it was going to count against us. And we can see that it's quite obvious where it costs us in games. Ronaldo doesn't change that problem, but he changed the expectation for all of us, and I include myself in that, because now we're automatically we've got to win something. You've got to win something serious, not just the Carabao Cup. You've got to win one of the major trophies, and I'm not even sure the FA Cup counts as that. It'd be nice to think it does, but we're talking serious ambition now. So you're looking at the problems that we've got, Paul, and saying, okay, are we now getting the best of what we have, or can we do better with what we've got? And as we intimated a while back, that's a question that we have to ask it, because we're now being confronted with it. Ollie's done well to stabilise the club, but I think it's probably fair to say we expected a trophy last season, and we have to have a significant run at the title now. The thing is, when he got the job, I feared that the position we were in at the time, from what Mourinho had left us in, that we would be going down to mid-table, like Arsenal, for example. I thought you hire a manager with no experience, you're gonna be wallowing around mid-table for a bit because of his inexperience. So I've got to be honest and say he surpassed what I expected him to do to be able to do in the first place. And now again, I find myself questioning whether he can take us to the next level, and I've got my doubts. But because he's proved me wrong before, I'm kind of thinking, oh, well, at least give him the full season, because he's earned it from his performance, to work out if he can get a better rhythm from what he's got. This is a bad example, but if he works out the midfield and it starts working properly and we finish third, I'd be more inclined to feel positive than if he doesn't and we finish with McTominay and Fred and finish in second. Does that make sense? So even if we get some good results, as long as I just think it's a big moment for him. And you said earlier about like I said, well, I was saying earlier, the latest one is Bayern and Chelsea sacking the manager mid-season and winning the Champions League, so we should do the same. I'm kind of surprised that one needs discussing, because it's so absurd to me that the idea that you rebuild the club to the point where you're restructuring the staffing structure, you've undertaken the massive investment at youth level, and you want to sack the manager in spite of there being not really convincing options out there. I mean, Conte is being one. A lot of good people I know are sort of talking about Conte, but I don't think anyone at the club I don't think there's anything from the club that suggests that United want him. I think it's just some people who were looking for anything other than Ole, and he's one of the best available. That to me says, if that's the best available, stick with what you've got. Just like invest in the patience a little bit longer. I'm not saying it's definitely going to be a success, but I'm more convinced in continuing with what we've got than I am the alternative of if it's Conte and for whatever short-term boost we get with that. Because someone else said new manager bounce. And I'm like, when has the phrase new manager bounce ever been associated with Manchester United? It's so alien to me. I'm not being disrespectful. It's something that you expect from Rotherham, not from Manchester United. Am I being too simplistic with that, Paul? Or are we going to be at a point where it doesn't matter if it's Conte or someone else, that you're just saying, no, Ole can't do the job. It's too big for him. You have to bring in someone else, even if it is for 6 months, a year.
I can understand what people are saying, and people do believe what they see. And Chelsea's one was just one of those, the way it worked out, it's just something I don't believe will again happen for a while, to be honest. But the difference was as well that there was good players at Chelsea, and he's come in and he changed it. And the fact is, he hasn't gone out and suddenly gone out and brought a load of players on the back of that. He's just used players within and just changed it that way. And everyone comes out and says, "Oh, the squad that he's got, the players he's got are good enough to." I don't think so. There's a lot of players at United, but there is a lot of dead wood. A lot of dead wood. That's the biggest problem. There's been too much giving people contracts for the sake of people having contracts. One of them I named, Bailly. So many centre halves. Why? Because at the end of the day, sometimes you have to say, we've lost out there, and just let the contract run out and let the player turn around and say, it hasn't worked out. There you are. Your contract. Look, you just leave the contract. Let the press write about someone's contract running out. If someone really wants him badly and think they can get him cheaper, there's a bonus. If not, the contract runs out. Your thank you to that player is that you're on a free. That gives you the chance to demand a little bit more because you haven't cost anything. But there's players sitting there who are content to be there rather than getting the hump and not turning up to watch games because they're too embarrassed to be sitting around, don't want to be sitting there and people asking them or people feeling obliged to say, oh, you should be in the team. They don't want it because their ego has been dented to the fact of they're not playing regular at Old Trafford. And trust me, it's not nice going to games when you're not playing regular, especially when you've had a taste of it. You just don't want to do it. And if a lot of those players, it doesn't bother them, doesn't hurt them enough not playing regular on a Saturday or a Sunday for Manchester United. They're quite content to sit at home while the game's going on, knowing that they're still there to a Manchester United player. It's not my problem. I'll be training Monday morning and I'll just carry on as normal. Which how do you train Monday to Friday and not have a game and not be involved, not being a Manchester fault? Mindset in his mind, it just doesn't make any sense. But that isn't going to change at this moment in time. A change of manager, I don't think. I think he needs to run to the end. He desperately needs the opportunity to get to a final, and then he needs to win a final. Because as far as I'm concerned, is if he gets to a final, if he doesn't make it to a final, you go kind of, and you can look at things. But if he makes it to a final and he loses another final, that would be it. I think the majority of people would just say that's it. They've had enough. They've had enough of seeing Manchester United lose so many finals because people are not used to it. They're not going to accept it, and it's big pressure. But he took that job on. There's other reasons why he took the job on, but if you're not willing to be under that kind of pressure and knowing that the job could disappear so quickly if you don't achieve what's written down in black and white for Manchester United, then you know it in yourself. I think he knows this is his most important season, that as much as he's signed a new contract, and no one knows how that contract's laid out, by the way, everyone just assumes it's more money and whatever. There'll be things in there that no one knows about that he might not just be as cut and dry in favour of him as what everyone believes it is. So he knows there's a demand on him this season to go and win a trophy.
Yeah, he's like I think January is going to be crucial. United are going to have to bring in a midfielder. You can't pretend that area doesn't need reinforcing. We can all see that it does, and I think he knows that now. I think, to be honest, he's tried to change it around a little bit, and that's why he's gone back to McTominay and Fred, because the other options haven't worked out.
Let me
But
say this bit, Wayne. Let me just say this bit is that now I keep reading about Paul Pogba and contract and allegedly how much he wants. I think that's one of those ones you turn around and just say no.
yeah,
We
I've
tried
said
to
that.
square pegs in round holes too many times, far too often, just to try and fit you in. And maybe Ollie just hasn't got that, or the people around him just haven't got that bit, trying to think how they can get the best out of him, how they can get him in a flowing midfield. And it just doesn't work. When he plays for his country, everyone talks about, I talked about it, he looks this, he looks that, but it's the way that team plays. He plays in a French team where ball retention is paramount. It's there. But it does. Manchester United don't play that way. There's a lot of chasing around, and when he does get it, he feels he's got to try and do something. He's got to implement something positive, and it's too much. And if he's going to go somewhere else, maybe back to Juve and do great, and everyone blows back a little bit in your face at Manchester United, so be it. It just didn't work out. There's been so many good players, great players, who just haven't it just hasn't happened from Manchester United when people have huffed and puffed with them. Pogba could be another one, would be another one,
Yeah.
is
Well,
another one as far as is.
yeah, at the moment, yeah, because 5 years evidence is more than enough to tell us that. But you made a good point, really. I mean, about sort of investing more time and patience in players. And really, January might help us out with that. Newcastle's recent takeover. There's a lot of, you said squad fillers, dead wood at the moment. But I mean, you look at Van der Beek, Jesse Lingard, Phil Jones, Anthony Martial. These are players ripe for a club like Newcastle who've just been taken over, who are probably thinking, especially Lingard, someone who's actually quite motivated. Ironically, probably one of those that you'd want to keep at the club. But those options are there, and there should be some money to spend with that. But the other thing is changes from within. We still got a little bit of time to talk about this. They talk about Kieran. You know that a lot of people talk about the backroom stuff like Kieran McKenna, Mick Phelan, and Michael Carrick. And it's fair to say when you look at them in conversation with Ollie, you're not sure of the distinction of what each of them brings to the table. I mean, under Fergie, and I'm not classing this in the Fergie era or realm or any comparison other than the fact that Mick Phelan was there, and when Mick Phelan was there, you understood that he was a go between the manager and the players. So he was there to relay information, and I'm sure he's a great coach as well because he obviously runs his own coaching school. He knows what he's talking about. You don't have a long career at United under Sir Alex Ferguson without knowing the pressures and the expectations of a club like that. But with Carrick and McKenna, you're not really sure. I'm not slagging them off, but you're not really sure of what they're bringing to the table. The club brought in a set piece specialist over the summer. There's also talk about another coach coming in. But the problem is when you do that, say if you're bringing in a tactical coach or something like that, then you run the risk of undermining what you've got in place already because you're bringing in a big name and you're saying that person knows better than the managers and that the managers don't have a tactical idea. And I was thinking about this. Who is there that's available that doesn't undermine what we've got? And really, the one that came to mind, Paul, and a lot of people might disagree with this, but the thought that I had was the best tactical coach that we've had over the last generation is René Mullenstein. And he's probably there to come back to the club if you sort of made the right offer for him. I know he's assisting at the moment in Australia, but he's going to be a coach who would come into the setup. He knows the club. He knows a lot of the players there. He works with them a lot of them as youngsters. He's worked closely with Ronaldo. He understands him as a player and as a person. And he's not going to undermine the setup. He's going to be championing it to succeed. Is that too obvious a call, or do you think that when you look at that backroom setup, do you think that something's needed? Would you think that Rene's too left field an answer? Do you think you move on and try and find the new Rene Melanstein, for example?
There's nothing wrong in blowing a bit of dust off a book and reading a book, is there? Because at the end of the day, it's the same when it's brand new and it's the same when it's old. It's just it's just matured a little bit. That's all the book's done. And someone like him wouldn't have changed in that sense. There'd be more positives to gain from that now, because you can then look at everything and you can just see it all there in black and white in his history. So he knows everything about Manchester United. He knows about the football they want to play and what they have played, and he knows exactly the way it's going now. And when you listen to him speak, because all they want to do when he's on, you see him on TV or you hear him, they want to talk Manchester United with him, and you listen to him talk, and you know that Manchester United is still there in him. You can feel it, he's still very we and us, all the things that put him there, that his DNA is Manchester United. I see nothing wrong in him coming back. The boss went down a path, didn't he, Wayne, in the sense of he wanted to do things differently. He suddenly saw that he needed help, someone to give him different ideas, someone to maybe question some of the things that he was doing all the time. And he was changing coaches. You think of Carlos Queiroz. He had I think he had a couple of spells, didn't he? Come in, and then also Rennie. Then you look at, he had Steve McLaren for a while, and he moved around. And the boss didn't care who come in, as long as they was going to improve. He didn't see them as a threat or might undermine him. As far as he was concerned, if he was winning games of football, there was only one person. There was one person, and there was 11 others who were winning those games. It wasn't about the new person comes in, and he's coming because of the fact of Sir Alex Ferguson was there, not because he was better. Sir Alex Ferguson wanted him there to improve his team, to someone who was going to put different things in his head for him to think about and maybe tweak. And you're not putting yourself in a pressure position by bringing someone new in. He's not going to take your job in a million years, but you're bringing someone in to improve the team. So if it's about that with Ollie, about someone, then that's the wrong way to. That means you shouldn't be in the job. Yeah. You've got to look to improve that side. It doesn't matter how big a name they are. They've come along because it's Manchester United. They've come along because they want to be involved in the club. There's nothing better than being involved with a football club, especially Manchester United, when you're winning games of football and you're winning trophies, because your stock goes up as well. So there's nothing wrong with that. I personally been saying it for ages. I don't know if Mick's been curtailed in what he does do, but I'm not seeing the old Mickey Phelan who was always there on the edge of the box all the time when the boss was in charge. He's not there. The boss would come down and everyone would suddenly just lift their shoulders up and pick. He had that when he come to the front of the box, you'd panic. There was something that he wasn't happy with or something, and he got there and his presence was enough about him opening his mouth. Mickey had that way about him, about encouragement, a stern encouragement. Mickey would come and sit down and talk to people. Even as a player, Mickey had that bit. He would turn around and say something. He wouldn't, even as a player when things weren't going right, he wouldn't get in your face and F and Jeff at you or anything. He would talk to you in a way, a bit like Robbo, really, in a manner, kind of just asking you a question. And that question would bother you up because you know that you're affecting one of your teammates and what they're trying to do. So you would step up. And Mickey's still got that about him. You don't lose that. But is he allowed to push that across? Is Ollie, is he with Kieran and with Michael? Is he making them try and do that? But I think you have to earn the right to do that, to be able to do that. Because even I sometimes, every time I keep coming up, who is it? Who is Kieran? I don't know him. And I look at his presence. It doesn't really instill enough in me. I look at Michael Carrick, and as much as how many games he played for United in the time he was there, has he done enough within the club coaching wise and regular? Did he do what all the work that Nicky Butt done to get to where he was? I don't think he did. So I think if there was a Nicky Butt there involved in that, I think there'd be a difference. Because Butt, he's got everything behind him: the trophies, the amount of games. and more importantly, the club's in his heart. You know,
It's a really interesting thing that you bring up. Like Nicky obviously brought up around Manchester, but Rennie, a little bit like yourself, if you don't mind me saying, is that some players and managers and coaches, they what makes them what they're composed of in terms of their football ideology marries perfectly with United. You're not necessarily born being a Manchester United with that kind of like Nicky Butt is, but if you possess that yourself, like Rennie, like yourself, that you're more inclined to succeed at the club, basically. And what I'm saying is like Rennie he's not necessarily harking back to Busby and Murphy and Doherty and everything, but he's got his own ideas. If anyone who has a conversation with Rennie Mullenstein knows he's one of the most intelligent people in football, basically. So that they know. It's an interesting one for me, and obviously I think that something has to change. I just don't like you. I look at Kieran, I look at Michael, and I think that they're there for a reason. Ollie trusts them; he's had them all the time. I'm not discounting what they do or don't do. I don't really know enough. We know enough of what Mick Phelan does. Like you said, you've had the experience of being around him. It feels like something else needs to change in there. If that coaching setup is to stay as it is, I just think
as we know, Wayne, it isn't. Sometimes it's been proven that it isn't always that happens on the pitch. That change is not always needed on the pitch. Sometimes, as we've seen before with United, with changes of coaches, that makes a difference as well. Different ideas, and sometimes get your own. There's nothing wrong in changing your mind as a manager. Changing your mind, and I think the boss changed it in a way. He's suddenly got an idea in his head, and I think that's more so when Carlos Queiroz come in, that he had to play in a different way in the Champions League to what he did in the Premier League.
Yeah.
He knew he had to make changes, and he had to change the dynamics of the team to put United in a better position. It didn't guarantee it straight away, but it set down a pattern, a formation, and the players he needed to take him forward to winning a Champions League. And that's why it all come about. They got the opportunity to come about in '99. It was close in '96. Was it not? No, sorry, '97. It was really, and it got closer and closer. But it took a tweak to be able to do that, to go that way forward. So it isn't always on the pitch. It's about the most important things happen off the pitch, because that's where decisions are made.
Yeah. Sinidja makes a comment there. I hope I pronounced that correctly. As Sir Alex says, you should always start with your best players. I don't know if you were listening at the start of the show, but yeah, we absolutely we concur with that. We definitely said that about Ronaldo and Sancho starting against Everton. Let's preview the Leicester game quickly. Paul, Varane was injured on international duty. Maguire looks like he's going to be out. A run of fixtures, basically, that means other people might not be as tolerant with Ole as what we are in terms of like the solutions from within that can turn not turn things around, because we're not in that Jose Mourinho position where everything's falling apart and it needs to be turned around just to kick us on. A lot of people, I don't think, see it that way. And it doesn't look like either of the central defenders are going to be out for a long time, but it is a reminder of just how poor and disorganised we can be in defence with just one change. So take the two changes, especially with the fullbacks being out of form, and it is more than just a little bit concerning, Paul, that we've got this run of fixtures. You don't know how long the two centre backs are going to be out. The first one's going to be Leicester away. And the problem, like you said earlier, right at the start of the show, is having these big games. They are going to be the ones where he's going to start with McTominay and Fred. So he's inviting all that pressure on. And to be fair, do you know what? A lot of people are saying, "Oh, he's being defensive with that." And in one aspect, he is, because it's obviously a pragmatic thing. But I don't think he's scared or anything. I just think he's showing conviction in his opinion. He's quite brave to do it, knowing that it's really not working in the midfield, and thinking well, at least it's got us through the big games. So that's what I'm going to be depending on for the next couple of months. But especially if the defense isn't right, it's basically. I thought McTominay and Fred against Everton was the like I said, it was the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of saying, well, they can't start in home games against teams of that nature. But now's the massive test for them in terms of the career of the club, because they've got to excel in this run of big games, haven't they?
They have, and when you look at Leicester, who at the moment are having a poor season, everyone's trying to cover Brendan Rodgers by keep talking about injuries and that, but they're in the position now, Leicester, where everyone was talking about them breaking into the top four,
Yeah,
and it hasn't gone that way, because all of a sudden you see how they've gone with injuries. So many loads of injuries. You keep talking about Leicester, but yet they're still leaving so-called one of their best players on the bench quite regularly in Maddison, a
yeah,
player that was mentioned with a lot of clubs. That little run he had, even before he went to Leicester, being mentioned with big clubs, and he got to Leicester and he was mentioned with big clubs. But now he's struggling to get in the team. But you look at it and you saw they went 2 up against Palace and then against a run of play, and then Palace come back and maybe should have won the game in the end. So they're not in great shape. Everyone will talk about United, their away form, but I don't think it's worth talking about because the form and the performance, the win percentage at home and the performances are poor at Old
yeah,
Trafford. So this one is about winning and forget about unbeaten runs and all that away from home. For me, that doesn't really ring true. It's about making yourself strong at home, and that's where you go and really achieve from there. Then you go away from home, and then you talk about your big results, big performances as well. So they need a big performances, and this will just show that maybe and find out a lot about players who come in, a lot more about them because they're going to have a little bit at this moment in time with kind of thinking they're going to get a little bit of a run of games, not coming in for the odd one. It looks like at least maybe 2, maybe even more so, maybe 3
yeah,
coming in for these games. And so it's going to be a test for those, can they do it? You have to judge them as well. In fact, some of them haven't played a lot of football. So they're going to go in there ring rusty, having to push themselves even harder, knowing they're under pressure to perform. On the other side of it, they know in themselves mentally is that once they do their job, there's a good chance if someone's fit, they're going to go back out again. So there's that side of it, and the mental side of it as well with these players. So it all depends how they're being managed off the field by Ole. How good is his man management skills to keep these players on a high, to keep them when they know that. I've seen it with West Ham. Seen a lot of West Ham recently. David Moyes has been doing that. Those players come in, he changes it around for League Cup, he changes it for Europe. Those players come in and they do an incredible job, and then they go back out again. Can Ole manage in that way? I think it takes a lot of years and experience to get that way, especially the players of today, the way they are. It takes a really a manager with a lot of experience knowing how to deal with individuals.
yeah,
So I'm really looking for United a good performance, not just they get over the line and a Ronaldo late goal gets them out of trouble. That's not Manchester United. You have that now and again. You go in the dressing room, you get a rollicking, and then you know you have to step up. That's how I remember things. But I just want I just want United to give a really good, honest performance and dominate a game of football. And you say, wow, won that 1-0, but it should have been 5. But you're not
yeah.
getting that at this moment in time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're completely right, as usual. The points that you've made there, they're so right. And United are in this position where those players who are all on the fringe, they're looking at saving the United careers, basically. Now, they can go to Newcastle if they want, but if, like a Lindelof, for example, the best that he's going to hope for the next 2 or 3 years staying at United is going to be backup centre half. But he's going to have to be the best backup centre half that United could wish to have. Otherwise, the career's on the line basically. In that role, it's all right. Well, it should be on the line. A lot of players do coast, but this is make or break basically. It's a make or break period for those players in those vital positions, especially with the injuries that we've got at the moment. It's going to be a very defining period, the next 2 months for certain. Like I've always been saying, it's not going to be certain that we know that Ole will succeed, we can definitely tell. We'll be able to tell by the end of let's say the end of this calendar year, if we've got any stock in McTominay and Fred carrying on as a midfield in the big games, or if that's got to pot and we try something different, or whether or not, if Ollie's just not up to it. I think those answers are going to be in this period, which is going to be basically its judgment day, this period of time. I'm looking forward to that Leicester game. Hopefully, we can pull out a good performance, like Paul says. We're overdue that more than we are a good result, to be fair. We'll be back next week to discuss that game and preview the game against Atalanta in the midweek in the Champions League. If you've enjoyed the show, please give us a nice rating or review on Apple Podcasts if you're listening on the podcast as well. And if you are watching on YouTube, like I said, please like the show. It really helps us out, and subscribe if you haven't already. We'll be back next week. So stay safe, stay well, and thanks for listening and watching. Cheers, guys.